Book of Job 42 verse 18. Restoration after suffering. The Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he prayed for his friends, and the Lord increased all that Job had twofold. Job 42:10, NASB. This verse comes near the end of one of the most painful and powerful stories in the Bible. Job had lost almost everything: his children, his health, his wealth, and even the support he expected from people around him. He had cried, questioned, mourned, and wrestled deeply with suffering. Yet after all of it, God brought restoration. But there is something very important in this verse that many people overlook. When he prayed for his friends, the same friends who accused him, the same friends who misunderstood him, the same people who added pain to his suffering, Job did not wait for them to become perfect before praying for them. He chose obedience, mercy, and humility even while carrying wounds himself. That speaks loudly to us today. Suffering does not mean God has left you. Many people today feel abandoned by God because life became hard. A broken marriage, rejection, loneliness, sickness, financial struggle, depression, betrayal, alienation from loved ones. These things can make someone wonder if God still sees them. Job's story reminds us that suffering is not always punishment. Sometimes we suffer in ways we do not understand. Sometimes we pray for answers and hear silence for a season. Job experienced that too. Yet throughout the entire story, God never stopped watching over him. Modern culture often teaches, if life is hard, you failed. If people reject you, you have no value. If God loved you, everything would go smoothly. But the Bible teaches something very different. God was still with Job in the ashes. God was still with Job in the confusion. God was still with Job in the waiting. And God is still with believers today in their darkest moments. Forgiveness opens the door to healing. One of the most powerful lessons from Job 42:10 is that restoration began while Job was praying for others. That is difficult. Human nature wants revenge, distance, bitterness, or self-protection. But Job chose compassion instead of resentment. This does not mean pretending evil never happened. It does not mean abuse is acceptable. It does not mean pain is not real. But it does mean refusing to let bitterness become your identity. Today, many people carry wounds from family conflict, divorce, betrayal, abandonment, church hurt, false accusations, broken friendships. The longer bitterness stays, the heavier the heart becomes. Job's example shows that healing often begins when we place our pain into God's hands instead of trying to carry it forever ourselves. God restores in His timing. Notice that restoration did not happen instantly. Job waited, he endured, he trusted even while confused. That is one of the hardest lessons for modern believers because we live in a world of instant results. People want immediate healing, immediate answers, immediate success, immediate relationships restored, but God often works through seasons. A seed underground looks forgotten before it grows. Winter looks lifeless before spring arrives. Many believers today are in a Job season. They are praying, waiting, hurting, and wondering if God still has a future for them. Job 10 reminds us that God is able to restore what seemed impossible. Sometimes restoration is material, sometimes emotional, sometimes spiritual, sometimes relational, and sometimes God does not merely restore what was lost, He builds something deeper, wiser, and stronger through the suffering itself. A message for today. This verse is deeply relevant in a lonely and wounded world. People are exhausted, many feel rejected, many silently wonder if their life still matters. Job's story declares, your suffering is not the end of your story. God still sees you even in silence. Bitterness is not your destiny. Restoration is possible. God's timing may be painful, but it is never meaningless. The same God who restored Job is still able to heal hearts, rebuild lives, restore hope, and strengthen those who feel crushed today. Job teaches us that faith is not merely praising God when life is easy. Faith is continuing to trust Him while sitting in the ashes, believing that He still writes the final chapter.